Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar on cybersecurity. I'm Thomas Johnson, the Florida Automation Division Manager for AWC. AWC is your local business partner to the world's premier automation and instrumentation companies. One of the biggest and best of those companies is our flagship partner, Siemens. Today we have joining us Chuck Tommey and Ford Cheeseman. They are going to lead us through the Oldsmar, we'll call it situation, and talk about some possible responses. I do want to thank each of you, the women and men who are supporting our infrastructure. Water and power are often taken for granted, but when there is a disruption, like with the recent storms sweeping through the United States, it's just a reminder of how critical these systems are. So thank you very much for your time and attention. With that, I will hand it over to you, Chuck.
Thank you. So yes, appreciate everybody spending some time with us today. I think we have an interesting topic. Hopefully it's interesting to you. Ford and I have been working together for a couple of years now at Siemens, and we've talked to many water, wastewater folks out there previous to this incident, and we're already talking about cybersecurity because there's a lot of kind of clues out there that regulation is probably coming to the water area. So this may be something that accelerates that, in our opinion. So let's just jump in and try to kind of understand what we think we know. We got the "know" in the quotes there because with cybersecurity, we really never completely know, it seems like, and we may get a report in 6 months or a year that is a little different than what we think we know now. But what we think we know is back on the 5th of February, there was an operator at his station, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, he saw the mouse moving around on the screen and checking some things out, and he didn't really think that much about it because he knew his supervisor sometimes would dial in and look at things, and they were using screen sharing software. So that was how it would work, is they would take over the mouse and keyboard capability when they shared the screen. Then about 1:30 later that same day, he noticed the mouse moving on its own again, and the mouse went over and changed the set point from 100 parts per million to 11,100 parts per minute for the sodium hydroxide, or better known as lye, concentration going into the drinking water. And of course that was alarming. He put it, well, not alarming on the system yet, but he put it back to 100 parts per million and called management and said, hey, we got something going on here that's a little out of the ordinary. So right there, I think this operator deserves like the Presidential Medal of Freedom or something. I mean, that was awesome that he was at his station, that he was looking at things, that he saw it happen, and he put it right back. So that's all you can ask, I think, from an operator. But he really shouldn't have had to do that in this case, I don't think, because what we now know, again, quotes, what we think we know about the control system is that it was not in great shape from a cybersecurity perspective, right? Now, I don't want to point fingers. We're not victim shaming here or anything. When we go out and look at industry, manufacturing in general, we find a lot of this. This is kind of state of the system, I won't call it state of the art, but we see this a lot. So this is something that we just need to be aware of and figure out how do we fix it, right? How do we get to a more secure state pretty quickly? But what we think we know is that TeamViewer was the screen sharing software that was in use. It was actually an older version, not up to date in any way. And the kind of interesting thing here is that the operator thought that they had stopped using it as much as 6 months ago. But it was still installed and still operable. And then it came out a little bit later that they were using Windows 7, 32-bit. So there's a good chance that was installed maybe 10 or more years ago, and was probably, and this is pure conjecture, but probably not patched to the latest. And even if it had been patched to the latest, there are vulnerabilities that are probably there that are no longer being patched, right? So the Windows 7 is completely out of service or support with Microsoft, so there are no new security updates being created, even if vulnerabilities are found. Another kind of big no-no here that we think we know is that there was one common password and login in use for everybody that used it's hard to tell if it's the system itself, the actual SCADA system, or if it was just for the screen sharing software. But we've seen that done in both cases fairly often. So the days of having operator or supervisor, they just need to be over. We need to figure out how to get every individual user and the processes to put them in when they get hired and get rid of them when they leave. That just has to be part of the way we move forward, or we're going to have situations like this where either the password gets out, somebody leaves and is disgruntled. We don't know that's the case, but that certainly could have been, or somebody is just messing around. It's hard to tell with having a common password, so that's why it's not a good idea, because you can't trace anything. And then this is the big no-no, right? Apparently there was no firewall, no security controls of any kind between the SCADA system and the wild internet. Again, not unknown, not something we don't see on a somewhat regular basis now. It's not as common as it used to be, but it just can't be anymore. We have to figure out what systems are out there that are connected. We have to figure out a way to get them protected, at least with just a basic firewall. And then the other thing we know, which at least this is what we've been told, is that there were additional checks in the system, right? That there was water quality checks that would have caught, either by pH or some other measurement, that there was too much lye or too much sodium hydroxide in the water before it left the treatment plant. And that, hopefully that's true. My question is, was that same system accessible on the same network that they use to get to the SCADA system, right? Because that's often the case. You have some kind of engineering station that's also on the same network. You may have, the alarming software that's for these other alarms, even if it's, an instrument. Could somebody have gone in and recalibrated the instrument if they'd known what they were doing, or been a little bit more, nefarious, and recalibrated the instrument so it wouldn't have measured it, and it would have looked like it was still fine? If that was possible, then we're again lucky that this person didn't know what they were doing to that degree. So that's kind of what we know. What can we do about it? Well, the water industry, again, like I mentioned earlier, has known that cybersecurity was probably a coming requirement that they were going to have to address. The latest EPA emergency response planning requirements that were put into effect with the I think it was 2018, the America's Water Infrastructure Act, that required some kind of response plan from every water system, and it included a requirement for having a response plan related to cybersecurity. So that's probably the first regulation or force of law that required anything to do with cybersecurity in the water industry, at least from a federal level. There may be some states out there that have done some other things, but that's the only one that I know of. And if somebody else does know of other states that are doing it, please let us know. But so the EPA is starting to get in the act. Of course, the American Water Works Association, AWWA, has multiple documents on their website talking about cybersecurity risk management, and then also talking about specific controls that you can put in place to help secure your systems. Now that we've had this Oldsmar incident, we have lots of additional commentary and guidance that's coming out from whether it's Department of Homeland Security through their CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency, or the FBI has some releases out there. And then there's other states. I couldn't find anything directly from Florida, but Massachusetts has a really nice write-up on things to think about as a water authority from a cybersecurity view. So there's lots of things out there, and we can follow up and talk about more specifics. We don't have a lot of time in this session, but be glad to talk about what other guidance is out there. And again, because of time, I'm not going to read through a lot of these things, but here's some of those recommended mitigations from Massachusetts. Of course, restrict all remote connections, install a firewall, use two-factor authentication and strong passwords, and do what you have to do to secure the networks, maybe even a VPN, or virtual private network. Additional guidance. Now this has a lot of links here, so obviously not going to read it, but a lot of the links we talked about, AWWA, CISA, EPA. This is a good one down here to, if you don't know about it, the Water ISAC, which is Information Sharing Association, has a document talking about 15 of the kind of best practices within cybersecurity, and it's all directed at water systems. So good specific guidance there. And then this is from CISA again. Again, I'm not going to read a lot of this, but one of the things I thought was interesting here, audit network configurations, audit logs for remote connection protocols. Well, all that is great recommendations, but if you don't have an audit, if you don't have an audit trail or logs that you can go back and look at, it's going to be pretty tough to do an audit. So there's some things that you have to put in place now so that some of these things can be done later, right? And just an overview of what Siemens thinks is a well-architected industrial or critical infrastructure type of network. Just a quick review. So where we have MindSphere up here is the internet. That connection would always be through some type of firewall. These days, what we usually make that a firewall we call a deep packet inspection or next gen firewall, which allows us to actually look into the packets as they're going through the firewall and say, oh, that's HTTPS for a web server, and it's a login request. You can actually see what types of traffic it is, and then you can base your decision on whether or not that's a valid packet based on what's in the packet, not just where it came from, which is what older style firewalls were based on. And then we have a DMZ here, or demilitarized zone. This is just a place where we try to route all the traffic from anywhere outside of the OT network, operational technology network, or plant network, whatever we want to call it down here, where the control is going on. So we route all traffic into the DMZ, and then that traffic can be decided upon whether or not it goes on down and interacts with things on the plant floor. And this is like I liken it to a man trap you might see in like a Mission Impossible movie, right? Where Tom Cruise walks in, has to do maybe his eye recognition, his iris recognition, or his handprint or something, and he gets through the first door. That door closes, then you walk down like a little hallway, and they make sure that previous door is locked. They scan him as he's walking down the hallway, and he gets down to the door at the other end, and then he has to, do it all over again, verify that he is who he is, and walk through that door. So that's kind of what a DMZ acts like. Is the data comes in one door, we check it, make sure it's good data, make sure that it's coming from the right place, that it's expected, and then let it interact with the rest of the system. So what are some things that we can do really easily without much money to make our systems much more secure? The first step of any program to really get moving on cybersecurity is to know what's on the network. You can't protect it if you don't know that it exists. And when we say protect it, there's two things there, right? You have to kind of know how the system is built and how it's architected so that you know where to put pieces of protection or protective gear. But then you also have to update those things. You have to patch your computer OSs, the software that's running on, and even the firmware that's running in like switches or firewalls needs to be updated. So if you don't know what it is and where it is and what level of firmware it's running, then it's very hard to maintain a system at a high level of security. So those are the things that we have to find out. Where is it? What is it? Oh, and is there support still available for it, right? Is that manufacturer still sending out updates if a vulnerability is discovered? If not, then we really need to put that piece of equipment on an upgrade list for the next cycle so that we don't have something that's unsupportable in the system. Other things we already kind of talked about, user account policies, making sure they have good individualized logins and passwords. Hopefully that would be in a system that's tied to Active Directory, so as people get hired, they automatically get an account, and then when they leave, the HR system already has a methodology, a procedure to make sure that they're taken out of Active Directory so that their account credentials are no longer valid. Other things, make sure you're up to date on patching, disable services that you don't use. So there's Windows computers are famous for coming with tons of services enabled, but we only probably, especially in a control system, we may only use 3 or 4 or 5 of protocols or services that have to talk to the outside world. Everything else, you can shut down and turn off, and then that really limits what options somebody trying to get into that computer has. And then be sure to turn on your logging and diagnostics. And then this one up here is talking about a SIM or SIEM software, which is a way to aggregate all the logs from a system into one place so that you can look at those on a regular basis and make sure that there's not something funky going on. And then finally, really, really, really important, in this case, it wasn't ransomware, but what we see in the industry these days is a lot of ransomware. And the only way really to recover from a successful ransomware attack is to have complete and up-to-date backups. And then the real key point here is make sure that the backups have everything you need, but the only way you're going to know that they have everything you need and that they're actually good backups is if you practice reinstalling from a backup occasionally, once a year or something. You pick one computer or one server and do a reinstall on an offline computer or when you're down. But then that way you can be sure that it works. If you never do that step, then when it comes time to actually use it and need it, there's a really high probability that it's going to be missing something, or you may not even know how to reinstall it. So those are all the keys to getting to where you can recover, making your system a lot more secure than it probably is at the moment. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ford to talk about some of Siemens ways that we can help also.
Thank you, Chuck. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. It does look like we're going to go over the time frame just a little bit due to some of those technical difficulties we had at the beginning. So apologize if that is cutting into anyone else's time. This is recorded, and we will have a PDF version of this available for you. So moving into from Chuck presented what happened at Oldsmar. We talked a little bit about ways to get started down the cybersecurity journey with different standards that the industry has been recommended for water and wastewater companies. And now what we're going to look into is how do you get started? What are some tools that are available for Siemens and AWC or that can benefit you and help prevent something like what happened at Oldsmar from happening to your municipality? So the first one I want to talk about, and this is one of the issues that led to the original hack, was a means of unsecured remote access was used. And so there were a couple issues. There was one, it was accessing a screen sharing application, which allowed access to the entire system. And two, they were using the same username and the same password for everyone across the company, which could then, if you think about it, lead back even into past employees, disgruntled employees, or if someone had even a post-it note that someone got a hold of, then that could lead to that password, that username getting out, and then someone being able to remotely access the system in an unsecured manner. So how do we do this in a secured manner? Well, from Siemens and AWC, we do have a solution called Cinema Remote Connect that offers a centralized user management server where you set up the usernames, the passwords for all of those individuals that need to access the network remotely. This could be your engineers, it could be one of your integrators, and what you can do is specify the areas of the network that you would like for them to be able to access. So that way they're not getting in and having access to the entire system. They can only see the areas that you need them to work on. So this is all configured within the server. There is a client application that would sit on a laptop. So the reason for this is to create a VPN connection, which is an encrypted connection that all this data is going to flow through so that nobody out there on the internet can see what is being passed back and forth. So this VPN connection will then end up in a security device. So there was mention of a firewall being integrated. So these devices actually serve as firewalls as well to serve as that traffic cop from information going in and out of your systems. So you don't have anyone snooping around where they shouldn't be. And then once you create that VPN connection, you can then see the devices that you need to access, the systems you need to access, or even if you need to do like a remote desktop session, that can be done as well through this VPN connection. And the good news is it does not have to be Siemens equipment, although it does work very well with the Siemens equipment and TIA portal with the whole all-in-one engineering solution. But you could see IP cameras if you wanted to monitor some stations or any other devices that you might have on your network. So that's one step. That's one way you can address that issue of secure remote access. So being able to restrict remote access, but in a secure manner so that you can still maintain operations. The next one is one of the key components of cybersecurity in industry is making sure you understand what is on your network. And this can be ever changing. New devices can be placed on the network, such as new access points or even hotspots. These can be considered vulnerabilities where someone could break in and do malicious activity. So ways to negate that is to have a network management system. Now from Siemens, we have the SINEC NMS, which is a network management system designed for industrial applications to not only provide monitoring, to do validation and verification, make sure if there have been any configuration changes on the network or any new devices added to the network, you can look at it from a past snapshot to the current snapshot and then analyze what new devices are there, why are they there, and then perform somewhat of a small cyber analysis on that information. In addition, this does allow you to back up the information from network devices. It is designed to work with Siemens networking devices. However, you can configure it to work with third-party devices as well. Now that we've talked about two of the tools that are available to help you get started, what's really the first step in this journey? And the first step that we see in this journey is understanding where you are at, is understanding what is vulnerable on your network, how does your network compare to the standards that are out there that we expect to be coming down the pipe for water and wastewater industries. And so this can be done through a cybersecurity assessment or a cyber audit. And that involves a networking expert from Siemens Professional Services to come out and perform this analysis, create recommendations on what are the top priorities of things to change within your system, within your processes, and then also within the way that your people act in a cyber secure manner as well. So at the end of this, what we end up with is a comprehensive report that will provide suggestions and paths forward to creating a solid cybersecurity posture for your network and your systems. So what I want to offer out to anyone on the call today is, if you reach out to myself, Chuck, or your local AWC account manager within the next 24 hours to set up a follow-up meeting or a consultation just to discuss anything that we have covered on this call, could be specific to the cybersecurity assessment or anything that Chuck covered earlier, what we will do is offer 10% off your cybersecurity assessment. So all you gotta do is just reach out to set up a meeting or a follow-up discussion, and then you'll be eligible for that 10% off of a cybersecurity assessment moving forward. So 24 hours, don't hesitate. But thank you all very much for your time. Really do appreciate it. I apologize that we have run over a couple minutes, but Chuck and I are here to help answer any questions that you all might have in regards to what we have covered today. So what I am going to do is open up Teams here. And if you're on the phone, you can hit *3, and that should allow you to speak or comment. So any questions out there from the audience at this time? Chuck, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I'd be more than happy to come and well, either remotely, with a webinar session, talk to your team as a whole, or talk to you individually about, how to get started, right? And this is a free consultation, no charge, and it's also not really Siemens centric, right? I mean, we're talking at a higher level here. We're talking about how do we get cybersecurity moving at your site. Of course, Siemens has products that can fit some of these requirements, but we're really more interested in trying to help you secure the water systems and make sure that really you can sleep at night, right? And that you don't have to worry about this moving forward. And there's some pretty fairly easy, fairly inexpensive things that we can do to really get you much more secure than at least Oldsmar was in this case.
Thank you, Chuck. And I know you like to say that cybersecurity is products, people, and process. So it certainly goes just way beyond the products. So there's a lot more that ties into cybersecurity and having that proper system in place.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Yeah, we apologize again if you're having trouble talking and if you're trying to ask a question. There is a chat function if you want to try that. Otherwise, just get in contact with us directly, and we'll be happy to talk. All right, I don't see any questions.
Looks like Eric came off mute there. Eric, did you have a question?
No, actually, that was very thorough. I appreciate it. I was curious as to what had happened out there, and I mean, obviously, some of those vulnerabilities were pretty obvious. But no matter how secure you think you are, I'm sure there's always a way. So it's always important to be mindful of your security, what you have currently implemented, and what you can do to harden it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why we highly recommend creating a cybersecurity program that's focused on the OT side of the network, right? The IT guys have been doing this for years and years and years, but they've generally kind of avoided the OT side for good reasons. But we can't do that anymore. We have to have a comprehensive across both.
Right. Okay.
Well, thank you again for all your time. We appreciate it and look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, everyone. Do
Bye, guys.
appreciate it.